Carrie. How you doing?
Great. How are you?
Doing good. It's good to see you.
See you too.
Yeah. So Carrie is our guest this week. She is multiple talents. She's a singer, a songwriter, an actress. Anything else that you do producing as well, I believe, a little bit.
Yeah, I've been producing. At a theater company I work with, I've produced 3 musicals that I wrote with some teenagers, actually.
Hmm,
So I've done, and some other shows that I've put together with jazz peeps and things like that.
that's
Um,
great.
yeah,
That's awesome. What's the name of the theater company?
it's called Moonlight Stage Company, which my husband founded, and I came to work for him, and then I ended up marrying him. So.
That's nice. And where is that located?
We are located in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Oh, very nice, very nice. So why don't you tell me a little bit about? I mean, obviously we met at Houston International World Fest back in 2016, and then we've kept in touch a little bit through Facebook over the years. And so I know that you write very beautiful music. You've had albums you've released. You've acted in projects, as we mentioned. So, which do you want to talk about first? You want to talk about the acting bug or the singing songwriting bug?
Uh, the songwriting led to the acting. So let's start there. It's a natural segue, I think.
Okay.
So, you tell me what you want to know.
Well, I guess what got you into songwriting? Like, what made you? Did you start doing it when you were young? Did you do it when you were older?
I
What
did
kind of led
start, I was classically trained as a child. So I was playing Mozart by like age 8. And my parents were very good about being strict with me as far as making me practice. But even as a young child, I had to practice, I tell kids this today and they're like, oh my gosh, but I had to practice an hour a day as a 7-year-old. And then it quickly increased to 2 hours a day by the time I was 9. So just that discipline was instilled in me at a very early age. But I always found, even back then, that I would get frustrated because I'd be like, Beethoven isn't here. Why do I have to play these specific notes? I want to play notes that I want to play. So there was kind of like this little artistic rebellion in there.
Okay.
And so after I was done with all my official practicing, I would play around and just come up with my own little musical ditties or whatever. And then I used to write poems. And one day I had the grand idea of put the two together, and voila, songwriting was born. So I didn't really start performing my own songs. It was my senior year of high school. This will date me too, but like Debbie Gibson was big, and I was like, I started listening. I'm like, I can do that, and then in college I started really writing a lot and performing a lot in coffee houses and wherever I could, venues on campus, etc. So kind of went that way and never looked back.
Oh, very. So, how did you get into the acting from the singing and the songwriting?
Well, I lived, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier before recording, but I've lived all over the country. So I was in Boston area for many years, and then moved to Nashville. And at that time, my children, I have 3 children who are now grown, but at the time I have twin boys and a daughter, and they were age 2 when we moved there and 5. And so anyway, I could not just perform at the drop of a hat when they were young like that. And so I was like, how do I use my time to prepare myself for if I ever have to be on camera? I was naturally an introvert, and I didn't want to get on camera and pass out because I thought that would be embarrassing.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I lived in Nashville. I'm like, okay, I'm going to use this time kind of as training. And I with fear and trepidation went to an agency looking to start modeling, and they took me, and then I started booking commercials. And once I was on the commercial set, I started meeting a lot of people who were like me. I was like, wow, this is just this is my tribe. All these people from the people behind the camera to the people in front of the camera. These are artists in their various disciplines, and we had just had so much in common. And so I found that I just really loved the environment. I loved the process of creating stories. And really music, you're creating like a little mini film in a way, like you're bringing your emotions and feeling, and you're expressing it through notes and through your voice. This was just a visual medium to do the same thing. So
Right.
that's kind of how I made the shift. I'm still, to be quite honest with you, insecure about my acting abilities, but Estes tells me I'm good. That's my husband.
Well, that's good. You want it's always nice to have the spouse tell you that
Yes,
you're, yeah.
yes. And he's intimidating too, because he's an acting coach, and he's coached so many people, and he's such a great actor himself. So I'm always a little bit like, but I have fun. So
That's good. Well, it is, I mean, ultimately creative stuff is supposed to be fun. I think that's something that I forgot who said it, but they were talking about the difference between English actors and American actors. And they said that the person that was speaking, I might have been Ian McKellen, I don't remember. But he was like, English actors have fun. They have fun with the language, they have fun with the dialogue, they have fun with what's written. American actors feel like they kind of think they have to be tormented and tortured, and or they're worried about, how do they look, and are they, looking good on film, and English actors just kind of. And my wife and I say that every time we watch something and we see some actor we've never seen before, we go, they probably English actor, and then we'll look them up. Yep, born in London or here or there or whatever. So of course that's not always the case. There's some really good American actors, but it is interesting that
yeah,
that
yeah.
fun thing. So with your music, do you um, when you come up with a song? I'm always fascinated by this. Do you come up with the song and then submit it to people like friends, family, people you trust for feedback? Or do you just kind of say, this is what I'm feeling and this is what I want to get out there as my art? And I really don't care what the
I think
feedback is. Yeah, yeah.
that's a good question. And I think it varied throughout my years. Early on, I would give it to family to see what they thought first. Um, and I love my father. I say this, and he would agree with me if he was sitting right here. But he's highly critical. Like if Shakespeare submitted works to my father, Dad would like edit it. so so after a while, I was kind of like, I was finding, I'm like, gosh, I'm getting so disheartened. I finally, the light bulb came on. It's like, don't show Dad your songs until after they're done. And that was when I was younger too. So now, and it kind of evolved. So in my Nashville years, that was a wonderful place to write something and then take it out to a bar, coffee house, wherever. I mean, in Nashville, you could sing at the laundromat. They probably have a singer-songwriter show at the laundromat. But there were just so many places to try out a song. So something that you were like, this is amazing. And then you go try it out on people in a live performance setting, and you see which songs kind of rise to the top. And now I kind of know instinctively which ones are going to resonate with people. And then of course there are some songs that mean a lot to me that might
Mhm.
not mean a lot to other people.
Yeah.
And so those songs, I don't care. And in fact, during my Nashville years, because that's a whole other story, but I was there about 4.5 years. And at that time, I was really trying to get songs published. I was trying to get a publishing deal, and that never came to fruition. But Nashville has a very set form, at least for country, kind of a set formula that they want people to fit into. And I didn't quite fit the mold. And after trying for a while to break through that barrier, I was like, you know what? I like these songs. And if nobody else wants to sing them, I'll sing them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I shifted there and never looked back.
Hmm.
So
What's your, I mean, I've obviously heard some of your music. I think it's very beautiful. It's very nice. It has a lot of heart, a lot of meaning to it.
mhm.
What would you say your kind of your music genre is? It kind of blues or jazz or
you know,
combination?
I still ask that question of myself. And I think that's part of what I used to struggle with as an artist, because again, well, at least as the industry goes, they want you to fit into a certain mold. Are
Yeah.
you pop? Are you indie? Are you jazz? Are you blues? I like all of it. And I can write across multiple genres. So I would say I'm influenced um, by definitely jazz and blues. I didn't start doing jazz till I moved to North Carolina,
Okay.
but but now my music's influenced by probably blues first, which blues informed jazz in the early days anyway. So
Hmm.
blues, jazz, gospel, Americana, and of course, again, classically trained. And then even musical theater. When I was younger in high school, I did a lot of musical theater, and people still tell me that, like, your songs sound musical theatery. And that's some people, I think, don't understand that it's really because my harmonic chord progressions are informed by jazz progressions, which were used a lot in musical theater. But
Mm.
um, anyway, all that to say, I don't know exactly where I fit. And I have I have 4 albums out. One is kind of more pop inspirational, and informed by like faith-based music. And then I've got another one that's very much jazz. When I started working in Charlotte, North Carolina, I moved to Charlotte in 2008, and I started working with fabulous jazz musicians. And then I started getting booked on a lot of jazz gigs and loved it, loved it, loved it. And so, but as the artist, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start writing music like this. So I wrote a whole album. It's called Home. And that I wanted it to sound like it was written in 1945. So the songs on there are original, but they sound like jazz standards. Ooh, I should turn my phone off. Sorry.
That's all right.
Um, and then and then I did a holiday album that is kind of a blend of jazz, blues, and classical. And then my latest album is called Waves. That came out in 2020, right before the world shut down. I released it on leap year, and my last gig was March 5th. And then the world shut down, and all my shows were canceled, and and then I had bazillion health problems, which so anyway, was not meant to be as far as performing. But my Waves album is more blues based.
Okay.
So.
And what's your I've asked a couple of people this, like, what's your creative process? What's the thing that inspires you to write something? I mean, I've had people tell me everything. Past experiences, just this aha creative spark moment, looking up at the stars, there's so much different stuff. I mean, I enjoy singing. I've done singing. I tried my hand at being in a band in my 20s. Um, I can write a script, and I can direct, and I can act, and I can do all those things. I've never been able to. It's just not my. So I'm always kind of fascinated by it. So I don't understand. Well, not that I don't understand, but I don't. I'm curious where the idea of music comes from. Like, what makes you?
What makes it? I teach songwriting. I kind of host I teach it one-on-one, and then I host a songwriter circle on Zoom these days, because so if anyone wants to join it, let me know. um, but music can be approached from really like 4 different ways. You can approach it melodically, harmonically, lyrically, and rhythmically. So for me, I use all 4. For example, if someone tapped out a beat, I don't know if you can hear that through Zoom.
Yeah.
I do a pattern, and then immediately I'll be like, okay, what melody fits with that? Well, that sounds kind of Irish. Okay, so if I want to write an Irish sounding song, what comes to mind visually? I think green grass. I think whatever. And I am very visual when I write. And then I think also moods, like that kind of a mood is more happy, upbeat, whatever. So then I start to think it's like painting a picture. But other times I might have a phrase come to mind. Like there's a song, I'll just demonstrate it for you here. This is on my home album. But I sat down and this phrase came to mind: don't forget about me. And so then I'll be like, okay, what's the rhythmic line in that phrase? And I sang it. Don't forget about me. And so I find the chords that match that melody, and then my imagination takes over, and then I'm like, where do I go with that? Don't forget about me when the stars hang in place. Remember my face. Don't forget about me. And then I go on and on from there. So, and then I have other songs that I wrote as a poem, and then I put it to music. I'm at the point now, when I was younger, I was always like, I have to wait for the inspiration to come. Now I've studied the craft and I've done it long enough. You know, you and I could write a song right now. We could write a Zoom song. So I know how to put it all together and kind of create what people are wanting. But the best songs, well, in any song, you still have to draw from personal connections. So you might take from a myriad of different things that have happened. It might be something you watched on a movie, it might be something you read, something that happened to you, but you kind of weave it all together and recreate, create something new from it, if that makes sense. Again, I compare it a lot to painting. What colors do I want to use? What textures? What do I want to evoke? So
I think that's what I always find fascinating about painting and music, is that it seems to be one of the few creative mediums where, like, an actor will do a scene and then they'll look to the director or the acting teacher or a peer or a classmate or their parents or whomever and say, like, how was that? Was that good?
Yes.
And everyone's going to have their own opinion. As you guys know, as I know, you put something out there in the film world, you get the whole gamut of thoughts and,
Absolutely.
beliefs on what it is. And directors are similar, right? I'll do something and then I'll have a very small group of people that I ask for their feedback. With painting and music, though, primarily painting, the painter makes it. He or she is not really, at least that I know, and the painters that I know, they're not saying, hey, everybody, come over, look at my painting, let me know what you think. Did I use the right shade blue? How's that red? And I've always felt like my brief experience in the band, me and the guitarist would work on something, and it was kind of like, well, what'd you like? What'd you? And that was it. Like, I never said to anybody, do you think we should do this differently or that differently? I'm just curious. You have any thoughts why that is? Why music and painting seem to be very different art wise than acting or directing or.
Well, probably, you know, unless you're even with a co-write, it's just like you and another person, but you're doing it by yourself. You're not painting with a group of people saying, okay, what should I do here? You're coming up with it. And I think it does depend on you know, you have to be not, you have to be confident in some ways. I've read things before. I can't remember who said this, but you almost have to be a little arrogant to put out your own work, because you have to be brave enough to be like, I like this. This is good enough, and you should look at it too. And but it's not to say, I think every human being, we all want people to like our work, and some of us more than others, probably. But yeah, like we could drive ourselves crazy, trying to write a song. If I went and even with some songs I have written, like when I've worked in a band setting, I've changed some things on some of my songs because some of my jazz guys are like, what about this? And I was like, well, yeah, maybe you're right. And then afterwards I'm like, why did I do that? I like mine better. Or like, and it's not a right or wrong, it's subjective. So again, and that's something else, I think, as I've learned that for myself, that I try to instill in people I work with, students, just finding your artistic voice, what that means, not only vocally, how you write with a style, but then also knowing, own your work, own what you do, and be confident enough in it. Because you're right, you put something out, and even this day and age, where as you've witnessed too, like on Facebook, I'll write something, I'll just pop it on Facebook right there, and I can put it out in the world. And and people have opinions.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be hurtful and sometimes it can be really encouraging, but obviously we want to get better at what we're doing, but it's subjective. And again, with Nashville, like I started realizing like I don't want to fit into the Nashville mold, and that's okay.
Hmm.
Um, and I went from when I first moved there thinking, oh my gosh, I have to fit in. I want, and started letting them try to define who I was.
Yeah.
And like you said, like with painting, I was trying to let them paint my painting. And then I was like, no, this is my painting.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
No, it does. I think it's one of those questions. I mean, I don't think there's ever going to be the definitive answer, that puts it all to rest. But it is something that starting out as an actor myself, I had a moment where, and it was after the band stuff, where I was like, I'm not asking anybody for their really, I'm kind of just making the song, or I'm coming up with the words. The other guy's coming up with everything else. But, I'm kind of just coming up with this thing that I'm feeling, and I'm not asking anybody, hey, do you feel that too? Or I'm just expressing how I feel. And then I started to feel with acting, I was like, well, why am I looking to other people for? Why don't I create the art of the character, and then the director will find the takes that he likes that kind of fit into his vision, which
yeah,
I'm helping to contribute because I'm a color of paint in his,
yes,
assortment or whatever. And I can give him different shades. Um, and then when I got into directing, that was a whole other thing, because you're trying to create mythology to some extent. You're trying to create, a couple of other guests we've spoken a lot about the story time around the campfire. Uh,
yeah,
that was something that we as a species has had for probably ever,
yeah,
as long as communication existed. And now it's different because there's not really one campfire. There's a bunch of different campfires because of people can watch things in all these different ways. Same thing with music. It used to be when up by me, you had PLJ and Z100, and then you had the old people station, which is now me and you, but
yeah.
it's like the
I know,
classics.
I know.
That was like such an eye opener when I was listening to something. They're like, "We got some oldies coming up, Alice in Chains," and I was like, "What? That's not oldies." Um, but yeah, I just think it's interesting that the way our society has kind of changed with all of these other avenues to get our art out there.
Yeah,
Um, it's also made it some instances a little more difficult to share it with everybody because so many people are going to so many different campfires. So it's not like must see TV on Thursday
yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
It's must see Netflix, must see Disney Plus, must see HBO Max, and sometimes something comes and it kind of crosses over, or there's music. But I kind of gave up on the radio stations a long time ago, so I'm not really listening to much of that. But yeah, what are your? I mean, that's something that's come up. One of the reasons I started these podcasts was I was really interested to see how people kind of view our current society, especially from the creative standpoint.
mhm,
Um, what are your thoughts about all the different ways you can share music, share film, share, that creative pursuit in this modern time, which has lots of opportunities but also challenges?
yeah. Well, I don't know if I'm gonna, say things that have already been said, but you've already touched on a lot of it. Like the upside is anybody can put something out there. Um, the downside is anybody can put something out there.
Yeah.
So quality isn't always monitored, so getting, sometimes what's frustrating is it becomes more about marketing.
Yeah.
And that, I guess that's an art in and of itself, a different type of art. And so many of creative artists are not necessarily great marketers. So, so learning how to, in fact, I have a song, where I just talk about being a whisper in the midst of a din, this cacophony. You feel
Mm.
like a whisper in the midst of all this noise. How are you heard in the midst of it? Um, but but for me personally, I think I've come to rest, uh, not, you know, on a good day, resting in the fact that I'm in my little corner of the world. I have, using the campfire analogy, I have certain people who come to my campfire.
Hmm.
How do I serve them? And for me, the great joy and beauty of art, and for songwriting, for music, films, same thing. It's that human connection.
Hmm.
That's what I love about it, because it transcends me. It's not about me. It's to me, it's about that shared humanity. And so to me, the best songs are the ones where someone else goes, oh, I feel just like that. Whatever emotion it might be, if I can come alongside somebody else and help them in their journey in life, and this, that we're all experiencing, I feel like I've done my job, and that brings me great joy. So, and I kind of look at myself as, okay, like if it was business, in business terms, if there's like a little boutique shop in your town, my town, Raleigh, I
Hmm.
feel like a boutique owner compared to the Gap, which is,
Right.
nationwide. And so many people want to be the Gap.
Yeah.
Um, but sometimes it loses trying to get into those bigger arenas, the bigger campfires. I'm totally mixing my metaphors, but
Sure.
trying to get into those bigger arenas, you lose what makes you unique, what makes you
Mhm.
special. Because all of a sudden it becomes about, like what you were saying earlier, American actors worry too much about what they look like, or how many followers I have. The crazy part of it, and now well, this is music industry and film industry, but the fact that people will choose who they're putting in their movie based on how many followers they have on Instagram,
Yeah.
or who they sign to a record deal based on how many followers they have. I understand it on a practical reason, but it's such a bummer on an
Yeah.
artistic, because there are so many wonderfully talented people out there who deserve a larger platform, who just aren't getting it because they don't spend their time taking selfies
Yeah.
5 times a day,
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that's. I mean, we're in development now for our next movie, and we've had conversations where someone has said, "Well, what's their followers?" And I'm like, I don't know. I got off Twitter. I have no clue. I don't go and check that stuff out. And I always push back. Listen, if I have two people for the lead, and one of them has more followers than the other, but the other one is more talented and I think is going to convey the story better to the audience, I got to go with that one.
Yeah.
And you can dock me, dock my rate as director for your publicity or whatever. Because I think really one of the issues and challenges that we have nowadays is the fact that a lot of really talented people aren't, and it's always been the problem. I mean, I remember hearing, I think Clint Eastwood was talking about how some of the most talented actors he ever knew aren't working. They never got a role.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like, nowadays it's even more so because so much of it, studios in particular, not so much indie film, but I think studios have really kind of lost the idea and the record business that people have to relate to the music or the movie or the actor. The actor makes you want to get into that car and they like pull up to you on the side of the road and they say, "Hey, do you want to hop in the car with me?" Now, if you're getting nothing but like death coming from the person, you're not going to get in the car. If
Right.
you go, well, this is actually seems like a pretty cool person, and yeah, you're going to go on the journey, and that's your movie, that's your character.
Yeah.
Um, and I think music is the same thing. I'm a huge Harry Chapin fan. I just, I grew up listening to his music. He was the next state over, and but there's a guy who I felt was really singing about things that resonated with him. And he
Mm.
wasn't a great looking guy, and he, had his issues and his struggles and everything else. But yeah, I really do think that there's something that is being lost nowadays when we're just worrying about followers and,
Yeah.
you know,
And I wonder too, is that just an American thing, or is that happening over in Europe as well? Like one of my friends from Nashville, found, and I know several musicians who have kind of a modicum of success here in the States, but in Europe, they're they're much more popular. And Europe didn't, and so they'll go over and tour for at least pre-COVID. They would tour Europe for a few months every year because they had a steady following there. And they found that those countries weren't so worried about, okay, oh, you're 25, oh, you're over the hill. You can be, you can be older, and you don't have to be a glamour queen to get publicity out there and for people to come to your shows. People come because of the love of the music. So I wonder if that translates now with this culture, Instagram and social media culture. So I'm dating myself there because I can't do TikTok. I tried. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't handle it.
No.
But
go ahead. No. I was just going to say that Instagram I can do because it's mostly pictures. Facebook I tolerate. It allows me to keep in touch with people, but in general, I've lost a lot of friends on Facebook.
I know.
And then on both sides of the ideologies, and then Twitter. I think it, like I said the last podcast, I think it's a cesspool and it's horrible. I just can't deal with it. And TikTok, I don't see the point. I just
it feels like social media kind of follows this digression too. It starts out really fun, and then as it gets popular, it just starts turning into oh, everyone's cranky and political. It's just like, wow, okay. So, but and again, maybe we're aging ourselves here, like TikTok, because I was on a music panel thing, and they were saying that music labels and record labels now are going to TikTok to find their new artists.
That's crazy.
And they were saying, get on TikTok. And I'm like, all right, I'm the old fogey. I'll go look. I couldn't handle it. I just could not handle it. And you look at, the hashtags and whatever, singers, but it's everybody in their bathroom singing a song. I'm like, no, I'm just going to keep doing what I do. And like you said, I'd rather just, for me, that's being more authentic than trying to get more followers, in order to try to get something else. I'd rather just generate what I can generate on the way I do it, and come what may, that works for me. So,
well, I think being an artist, you have to be in touch with your truth, whatever that truth is. It's got to be true to you. And if you start to compromise that, I think it's reflected in your work. And there's certain actors who I see, from our generation, who initially when they started, I thought they were really good. And then as time went on, I'm like, God, they just got worse and worse and worse. And I think they got removed from I don't know them, so I have no clue. But as the more famous they got, and then they got divorced, and then this happened, and then that happened, and their life seemed, they divorced the wife who had stood by them for 15, 20 years, and you never know the intricacies of their relationship, but it just seemed like their acting got worse, and they just weren't in touch with their truth anymore. And I think it's important for creative people. I know it is for me, and it sounds like it is for you. You have to do what feels right.
I think that's a great observation, because it's not that you can't still produce works of art, but if you're not personally invested in it or connected to it, there's a sterile, is that a word? Sterility? It feels sterile. It feels sterile. It feels like a veneer, and I think that for me, that's what it felt like in Nashville. I came to that realization. I'm like, I'm writing songs now to try to get them to like me, instead of writing what I like. And you're right. Like once I went back to being personally invested in what I did, it really opened up. And the irony of that is, I was in Nashville from 2004 to 2008. And then I moved to North Carolina. I was in the Charlotte area. And that's when I started working with jazz people. And it's funny because I was so excited to start doing jazz, and I was having so much fun, and it was infectious. And people started gravitating to what I was doing because I was having fun. And I think they wanted to, and again, the community aspect of it, I wanted to draw them in. And then the irony was people in Nashville who wouldn't give me the time of day when I lived there, through social media, started seeing all the stuff I was doing. And all of a sudden, then they were interested in me, where
Mm.
when I lived there, I was
Mm.
just, oh, aren't you cute? An aspiring singer, still trying to make it in her 30s. Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway,
Yeah.
personal connection, good thing.
Yeah, no, it is, and keeping yourself focused when everyone's telling you no, and it's true. I'm always fascinated by the story, the idea that no one wants a stock until everybody wants a stock,
Yeah.
and once somebody says, "Hey, that's a good stock," "Ooh, it is." Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's almost like as an artist, you need to buy. That's the one time you should compromise your values. Is where just buy. Hey, this is a great person. This is a great musician. This is a great filmmaker, actor, whomever. Because then,
Yeah.
oh yeah, well, I'll take a look at that. Because the one thing I've noticed, the more involved we've gotten with we're still obviously indie filmmakers, but as we've started to delve a little bit more into the studio-ish world of system, you see a little bit more of a lot of insecurities. It's almost like if you tell us, no, 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 that's good, you're wrong. Oh, okay, I must be wrong then.
Mm.
Nobody wants to offend, and nobody wants to, be wrong. So it's almost like if you can tell people you're good, and other people say you're good, then as happened for you in Nashville. Oh, hey, yeah. Oh, what's this about? Oh, yeah, you come a long way, kid. One of those things.
Yeah, yeah. I realized I started to understand what smoke and mirrors really meant, what they would talk about that, because what launched me in North Carolina um, was stuff that I learned about marketing while I lived in Nashville. I was the coolest big doe-eyed artist in Nashville, and then I learned a lot. And then in North Carolina, I entered this songwriting competition, and I entered it, and I was just starting to work with some jazz guys, and I was having a lot of fun. And the very first jazz song I wrote was a song called Queen City, which is a nickname for the city of Charlotte.
Hmm.
Um, and I did that intentionally. But I was personally connected to it because I was really excited to be in Charlotte. It was my new city. I was starting to really love jazz. And so I kind of wove this story together in my lyrics. But I entered it into this North Carolina songwriting competition with the thought of, okay, if I get to the finals, I can use that as a marketing piece so that when I'm trying to get booked in a venue, I can say, hey, I'm a semifinalist or I'm a finalist in this thing with my song Queen City. Well, I ended up winning the whole thing, and it launched me. And then it was the very first jazz song I wrote. And then I got and I did the work myself. And then I called newspapers, I called magazines, I called television, and I called radio. And
Hmm.
I got media coverage on all the platforms. And then, bam, all of a sudden, people were like, oh, this new jazz singer, Carrie Marshall. And that was the first and only jazz song I had written. Like, oh, I better write some more. But then it became like this, okay, once somebody else says you're good, then people believe it.
Yeah.
And of course you have to have the chops to back it up.
Yeah.
But that was a great business lesson and marketing lesson that I learned from living in Nashville. That and good headshots. Pay the money to get a good headshot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
If you want to look professional,
Yeah.
start there.
Yeah. Don't do a selfie kind of
Yes,
headshot. Right.
yes.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, I forgot what my whole point was with that whole big story, but there you have it.
You made it. You made it. So I know we have a little bit of limited time. I always like to ask my guests, obviously dealing in the creative world, deal with a lot of different personalities. The things that I've always loved about it was people of so many different mindsets and belief systems coming together to work on one thing. And at the end of it, you can all hold that up like an amazing flag and say, we made this. But nowadays it's very challenging because it seems like there's just hashtag offended and hashtag I'm upset and all this other stuff. So people who used to maybe work together easily now don't, or everyone's tiptoeing on eggshells around each other. how do you see that as a creative person? How do you handle dealing with, this interesting, I call it a time of tribalism where everyone's kind of in their tribe.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you handle it, deal with it,
It makes me
still?
sad. It makes me sad because I feel like it hinders creativity. I feel like it hinders collaboration. Um, and it hinders growth because I mean, bottom line, every human being needs to be respected. Um, you can respect somebody and not agree with them on all points.
Hmm.
Um, and so, creatively, like I'll approach this as a musician. Obviously, that's my first artistic medium, but music has been influenced throughout the ages by different cultures and races and time periods, and we're the richer for it.
Hmm.
And we grow and we build upon the new music based on all of these other factors. I look at that as an artist and I'm like, if we compartmentalize everything, we're going to lose those layers of complexity that make the tapestry richer. See, I'm mixing metaphors again. Ugh.
No, it works. They all work together.
But to me, and that's part of the fun of the artistry, is I don't want to be around people who just think just like me.
Hmm.
If I surround myself with people who just think like me, I'm not going to learn and grow.
Yeah.
And also we talked about, the criticism before, because every human being needs to be, you know, we need to be loved. That's a human need. So how do we help other people grow? How do we see the best part of them?
Hmm.
Um, but also, do we have the freedom to help somebody grow so that like we can come alongside and help somebody creatively get better or grow or whatever? And this is such a big topic to end to finish up with because it's so deep.
Yeah.
Um, am I making any sense? I'm
No,
starting
you
to.
are. You are. I think I agree. It's interesting. A lot of people share the same view. Is that, I think if you're a rational thinker, you realize, hey, I can have a different view. I can vote differently. I can this. I can that. And someone else can do the same thing. And that doesn't mean they're evil or they're the Antichrist or they're the this or they're the that. It just means they got a different freaking view. And
Yeah.
in this instance, because maybe, this topic, and this topic are more important to them because of their experience in life. And
Yes.
this topic, and this topic is more important to this other person because of their experience in
Right.
life.
That's right.
Okay, well, the nice thing is, and how we get places is when we take those two and we kind of put them together and we say, okay, this is important to you, but this is important to me.
Yeah.
Let's compromise. Let's work forward. Let's move forward. Let's work together,
Yeah.
and move forward together.
Yeah. You're right. And there's different purposes and intentions for different artistic projects. So, someone might be a real social activist, and so they're going to create art that fits in an alignment with what they believe there. Somebody else might be like, okay, I want to write, again, speaking as a musician, I want to write happy pop songs that people feel great when they're
Mhm.
driving down the road.
Right.
Those are two different things, and the
Hmm.
world needs both. It
Yes.
shouldn't be an either or. It's a yes and.
Hmm.
Pulling an improv. How do we? The world needs all that, and we as human beings can get overwhelmed if we try to attack, or not attack is the wrong word, but if we try to address every single problem in the world,
All
we
right.
can't. We'll just get buried.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's why we have the whole human race. Again, going back to my like boutique thing. If this is my little area, I can do this with my area, and I can touch people who then, like a virus, hey, and then that can touch other people, and it grows and expands until the whole world is
Yeah.
infected. Hopefully with good things.
Yeah, exactly. Way to bring it home right to what we're in
Yeah.
right now.
Woo.
There you go. Made it happen. I know you have some students coming up in a couple of minutes that you
I
have to
do.
go for. So, but I greatly appreciate you hopping on, and
Thanks for asking me.
oh, it's my pleasure, and I'll be definitely talking with you soon.
Okay, sounds good, David. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
My pleasure. Bye bye.
Okay, bye-bye.